The dry air, a rasp against your throat, held the ghost of sagebrush and distant heat. You sat at a scarred wooden table, its surface gritty with fine desert dust, inside the desert safehouse with portable money counter humming. The rhythmic whirring, a low mechanical lullaby, accompanied the steady flick of crisp bills passing through its maw. Each digit that climbed on the small display was a testament to a life meticulously rebuilt, brick by silent brick, far from the city's unforgiving glare. Your fingers, once accustomed to the cold steel of a service weapon and the slick feel of forensic gloves, now navigated stacks of paper currency with a practiced, almost meditative grace. The scent of ink and linen filled the confined space, a stark contrast to the metallic tang of blood and fear that once permeated your days. Seth Corbin. That name, once a badge of honor, now felt like a brand, etched with the acid of public scorn and professional failure. You had shed that skin, or so you believed, retreating to this sun-baked sanctuary where silence was a shield, and the only judgments were your own. A bead of sweat traced a path down your temple, tickling the edge of your stubbled jaw. The air conditioning unit, overworked and wheezing, struggled against the relentless midday sun that pressed against the corrugated metal walls. Outside, the world was a vast, indifferent expanse of ochre earth and an impossibly blue sky. Inside, your world was defined by the hum, the stacks of cash, and the quiet vigilance that had become your second nature. You were a sentinel of your own solitude. Then, a foreign sound sliced through the monotonous whir. A sharp rap, insistent, against the reinforced steel door. Your hand froze, hovering over a fresh stack of hundreds. The money counter's hum seemed to amplify, a sudden, intrusive drone. No one knew this place. Not truly. Not anymore. Not since the last echoes of the Shadow Weaver case had died, taking your career and reputation with it. You rose, a silent predator, your movements fluid despite the years of self-imposed dormancy. Your gaze swept the room, noting the glint of the old hunting rifle propped in the corner, the worn leather holster on the shelf, the secure locks on the windows. Every detail, every contingency had been considered. This was your fortress, your last stand. Another knock, harder this time, vibrating through the floorboards. "Corbin, I know you're in there, you stubborn mule." The voice, rough and familiar, ripped a jagged seam in the fabric of your carefully constructed piece. The detective. Not the one who had taken your place, but an older one, from a different precinct. A man who had seen you at your best and worst. A ghost from a life you'd sworn to bury. You hesitated, a knot tightening in your gut. To answer was to invite the past in, to shatter the fragile glass of your present, but to ignore him. That was a luxury you suspected you no longer possessed. With a sigh that tasted of resignation, you moved to the door. A twist, a click, and the heavy door groaned open a crack, revealing a sliver of the blazing desert and the grim face of the visiting detective. His eyes, perpetually tired, widened slightly at the sight of you, then narrowed, taking in your gaunt frame, the weariness etched around your eyes. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. They found one. Out near the old water tower, just like the others. The word struck you with the force of a physical blow, silencing the money counter's hum in your mind. Others? Your voice was a low rasp, unused to conversation. The signature, Seth. It's identical. The placement, the staging, the message. He pushed a crumpled photograph into your hand, his fingers trembling slightly. A young woman, mid-20s. Same precise, almost surgical incision. Same symbolic placement of the personal effects around the body. Same meticulously arranged wildflower petals, dyed crimson. Your eyes, trained to dissect horror, scanned the image. The meticulous cruelty, the artistry of malevolence. It was all there. The one that had ended with no arrest, no justice, only your downfall. The petals, you murmured, your voice barely audible. Crimson, just like Evelyn Hayes, just like the others. Evelyn Hayes, the name of the first victim in your case, the one whose unsolved murder had started your descent. Exactly, the detective said, his voice grim. And the note, Seth, tucked into her hand. Same paper, same peculiar script. It just says, Unfinished Symphony. Unfinished Symphony. The killer's taunt. The phantom you had chased through the city's underbelly, only to have him vanish into thin air, leaving you holding the empty bag of your shattered career. You stared at the photograph, the image of the young woman's face, peaceful yet profoundly violated, burning into your memory. The isolation you had so carefully cultivated had shattered. He had merely been waiting. And now, he was calling you back. Your fingers, calloused from years of gripping things far heavier than a pen, traced the edge of the photograph. Unfinished Symphony. The words, stark and cruel, etched themselves anew into the landscape of your memory, a scar that never truly faded. The image before you, a fresh horror, yet imbued with the chilling echo of a decade past. The shadow weaver. You stared at the photograph. The image. A distant engine rumble, faint at first, then growing into a low growl ripped through the fragile piece. You stiffened, a primal instinct honed by years of living on the periphery. The money counter continued its hum, oblivious. A plume of ochre dust billowed across the horizon, a rolling cloud announcing an unwelcome arrival. A battered sedan, its paint faded by relentless sun, bounced across the uneven terrain, kicking up a rooster tail of grit. It pulled to a halt some distance from your sanctuary, wisely respecting the invisible perimeter you had always maintained. The driver emerged, a silhouette against the blinding afternoon sun. You recognized the gait, the familiar slump of shoulders that had once carried the weight of justice alongside your own. It was the detective, a man whose weary eyes had seen too much, just like yours. He stood there, a solitary figure in the vast emptiness, hands shoved into his pockets, his gaze sweeping the desolate landscape as if searching for an answer in the shimmering heat haze. He knew you were here. He wouldn't have driven all this way otherwise. You remained silent, unmoving, letting the desert's profound quiet stretch between you. Finally, the detective raised a hand, a slow, deliberate gesture. Not a threat, not a demand, but an appeal. A silent request for an audience. With a sigh that felt older than the desert itself, you disengaged the reinforced deadbolts, the metallic clang echoing sharply. His eyes, rimmed with fatigue, met yours. There was no accusation, only a profound weariness. "Seth," he began, his voice raspy. "I wouldn't be here if it wasn't him." You leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, a barrier against the past he represented. Him? The ghost you couldn't catch 10 years ago? The one who shredded my life into confetti? Your voice was flat, devoid of the anger that still simmered beneath the surface. You had worked too hard to bury that rage, to let it erupt now. "The new victim," the detective continued, ignoring your bite. "Found yesterday. A young musician, same age as the first, same method, and the same message." He paused, letting the words hang in the air, a poisoned chalice offered to your lips. Unfinished Symphony, the name scraped against raw nerves. You had known it already, of course. The news had bled through even your carefully constructed isolation. But hearing it from him, from the official channels, made it real, concrete, inescapable. So, you want me to do what? Consult? Provide an expert opinion on the killer who destroyed my career and then vanished? "We're lost, Seth," he admitted, his gaze dropping to the parched earth. completely lost. The crime scene. It's a mirror image. The exact same ligature marks, the precise placement of the instrument. But there's something else. Something only you would know to look for. Your brow furrowed. What are you talking about? You had dissected every detail of those original cases, every fiber, every dust particle, until the patterns were burned into your very soul. Not just the specific finger, but the angle of the wrist, the subtle curl of the ring finger. It was never released to the press. We kept it back, a unique marker. A detail only the original investigative team would know. The angle of the wrist, the subtle curl of the ring finger. A detail so minute, so seemingly insignificant, yet you had spent weeks fixated on it, convinced it held a key. This wasn't just a similar crime. It was a deliberate continuation, a direct challenge. And it was aimed squarely at you. The desert wind picked up, swirling dust around the detective's feet. The money counter's hum seemed to intensify, a nervous pulse. You felt the weight of the past, a crushing burden pressing down. The phantom had returned, or perhaps, as you had always suspected, he had never truly left. He had simply waited, watched, and now he was beckoning. "Show me the files," you said, your voice low, gravelly. The words tasted like ash, but once spoken, they felt inevitable. The cold tremor, that recognition, still hummed beneath your skin as you retreated. The memory of the previous victim's hand, frozen in an unnatural repose, now mirrored by the stark image you had just witnessed. It was not mere similarity. It was a signature, etched into the very fabric of your ruin. The world outside the glass seemed to blur, a frantic watercolor as your focus sharpened inward on the phantom grip of a past that refused to relinquish its hold. You drove, the desert highway stretching before you like a ribbon of forgotten time. The engine's growl a steady counterpoint to the tempest brewing in your skull. The sun, a molten coin, began its slow descent, painting the distant mesas in hues of bruised violet and burning orange. Each mile was a deliberate separation from the official channels, from the well-meaning but ultimately blind investigators who would undoubtedly miss what you had seen. They would catalog, photograph, theorize, but they would not know. Not the way you did. Your destination materialized from the shimmering heat haze, a low-slung structure weathered by sun and sand, blending almost seamlessly with the arid landscape. This was your sanctuary, your fortress of solitude and secrets. You ignored its quiet industry, your gaze already fixed on the steel-reinforced cabinet tucked against the far wall. With a practiced hand, you worked the combination lock. The tumblers clicked with an intimate familiarity, a sound that always felt like the turning of a key in your own mind. Inside, stacked with meticulous order, were the ghosts of your former life. Manila folders brittle with age, faded photographs stapled to handwritten notes, a thick leather-bound journal filled with your own frantic scrawl. This was the archive of your undoing, the cold case that had consumed you, then discarded you. You pulled out the file marked The Chalice Killer, Case 07-24. The name, coined by a sensationalist reporter, still grated. It implied ritual, an almost sacred intent, when what you saw was pure, calculated malice. Photographs of the first victim, a young woman named Elise, stared up at you. Her face, serene even in death, offered no answers. But your eyes, honed by years of obsessive scrutiny, immediately went to her hand. There it was. The left wrist, subtly bent inward, the ring finger curled just so, almost as if cradling an invisible object. A signature. A silent declaration. You pulled out your old, dog-eared notebook, flipping to the pages filled with sketches and annotations. Left wrist, 15-degree flexion. Ring finger, second joint, partial curl. Consistent across all victims. Your own words, penned in frustration and desperation, now resonated with a terrifying vindication. The official reports, however, glossed over it. Hand position. Natural, one read. No signs of struggle or defensive wounds on hands. They had seen, but they hadn't observed. They hadn't understood. A discreet vibration from your burner phone pulled you from the past. You knew the number. No name, just a string of digits burned into memory. You answered, voice low. It's done. The voice on the other end, thin and raspy, barely audible over a faint static, confirmed. The preliminary, just like you said. You paused, a tremor of anticipation running through you. The hand. Be specific. Left wrist, Seth. Angles exact. And the finger, that little curl. It's there, clear as day in the preliminary shots. They're calling it. Unusual post-mortem positioning. The voice held a dry, almost cynical amusement. They're already theorizing about the struggle, how she might have landed. They always do, you murmured, the words tasting like ash. Anything else? Anything they didn't see? There's something about the placement of the body, a slight shift, almost imperceptible, like it was adjusted after the initial drop. But the ME hasn't picked up on it yet, just a gut feeling from the first on scene. A slight shift, adjusted. Another layer of meticulousness. You thanked the voice, the line going dead with a soft click. You laid out the old photographs next to a rough, hastily sketched diagram you'd mentally constructed from the new information. The victims were different, the locations varied, the methods subtly evolved, but the message was identical. The signature, overlooked by everyone but you, was screaming from the pages. Then you saw it. A detail in one of Elise's old crime scene photos, one you had dismissed as irrelevant at the time, overshadowed by the more prominent clues. At the time, you'd attributed it to a fallen leaf, or perhaps a displaced pebble. But now, with the new information of a slight shift and adjusted body placement, your mind reevaluated. It wasn't random. It was a faint, shallow scoop, perfectly consistent with the narrow, pointed heel of a certain type of shoe. A shoe that wouldn't belong to Elise. A shoe that spoke of an unseen presence. A meticulous adjustment. The realization hit you like a physical blow. You had focused so intensely on the hand, the obvious signature, that you had missed the subtle evidence of the killer's own presence at the scene, beyond the act itself. This wasn't just about the victim. It was about the killer's lingering touch, their almost artistic final flourish. This wasn't just a copycat. He had just grown quieter, more precise, confident that his unique handiwork would remain unseen by all but the one man whose career it had destroyed. And now, he was back, waving his old banner, daring you to see. You would not fail this time. The voice on the line had confirmed your suspicion, layered another meticulous detail onto the canvas of brutality. This wasn't just a killer. It was an artisan of despair, staging death with a chilling, theatrical precision. A sudden, sharp rap at the reinforced door made you flinch, a jolt of static electricity through your nerves. Here, in this remote shell of a life, unexpected visitors were a luxury you couldn't afford, a threat you hadn't anticipated. Through the narrow peephole, a figure stood silhouetted against the blinding glare. Not a face you knew, not a uniform, just a delivery driver, a stoic messenger clutching a small, unmarked package. Your jaw tightened. No one knew this location. No one should know. Slowly, you unlatched the heavy bolts, the creak of the mechanism loud in the confined space. "Seth Corbin?" the driver asked, his voice flat, devoid of curiosity. He held out a digital tablet for your signature. You scrawled your name, a ghost of your former self, a name that carried the weight of 1,000 failures. He handed over the package, a slim, rectangular box wrapped in plain brown paper. then turned and left without another word, the engine of his vehicle sputtering to life before fading into the vast expanse. You re-secured the door, the heavy thud echoing. With a meticulousness that mirrored the killer's own, you peeled back the paper, revealing a simple, unadorned wooden box. No markings, no sender's address. Just the unvarnished grain. Your fingers brushed the lid, a shiver running down your spine. This wasn't a coincidence. This was an invitation, a direct address. The killer wasn't just leaving a signature at crime scenes, they were sending a message directly to you. With a deep, steadying breath, you opened the box. Inside, nestled on a bed of shredded black paper, lay a single item. Not a weapon, not a threat of violence, but something far more insidious. And beneath it, a photograph. Your breath hitched, but it wasn't just any photograph. And it was framed by a single, perfectly pressed white lily, its delicate petals already beginning to brown at the edges. This was not merely a taunt. It was an intimate invasion. The killer knew you, knew your past, knew your deepest regrets. The badge, the specific photograph, the lily, a macabre tableau designed to pierce through the layers of your hardened resolve. It wasn't just about the victims anymore. It was about you. You picked up the photograph, your fingers trembling slightly. The lily's scent, faint and cloying, seemed to cling to the air. The tarnish on the badge wasn't just age. It looked like a deliberate application, a stain. You turned it over. Scratched into the back, almost imperceptible, was a series of coordinates. Not a full address, just latitude and longitude, a digital breadcrumb. The realization hit you with the force of a physical blow. The killer wasn't just back. They had been watching you, waiting. This wasn't a random resurfacing of an old ghost. It was a deliberate, calculated move to draw you back into the hunt, to make you face the specter of your greatest failure. This was personal. Deeply, irrevocably personal. The quiet life in the desert, the hum of the money counter, the attempt to fade into obscurity, all shattered by a single wooden box. Amelia Vance's ghost, coupled with the stark reality of your tarnished badge, was a gauntlet thrown. Your eyes narrowed, the determination you thought long dead stirring to life. A potent, dangerous fire. This wasn't just an investigation anymore. This was a duel. And the killer had just revealed their hand, showing you they knew exactly where to strike. The coordinates on the back of the badge burned into your memory. You would follow them. You had no choice. The metallic scent of the counting machine, a sterile counterpoint to the dry, sun-baked air, filled the small, windowless chamber of your desert safehouse, a stark reminder of the life you had built, or perhaps buried. You traced the worn grain of the wooden table, the rough texture of familiar comfort against the sudden chill that had settled in your bones. The news had arrived, not with a bang, but with the quiet, insistent ring of an untraceable burner phone. "We have a primary." The detective's voice had clipped, devoid of warmth, a professional detachment that always grated on you. An associate of the victim. Bad blood, recent financial dispute. Motive clear, opportunity established. He's being brought in. A name had followed, a name that meant little to you, just another mark on the city's ledger of petty grievances. You listened, your jaw tight, as the detective laid out the case. The associate, a man known for volatile outbursts, had been seen near the victim's property hours before the discovery. A history of threats, a recent bankruptcy tied to the victim's business dealings. It was a neat package, tied with a bow of circumstantial evidence and plausible anger. The department was moving fast, eager to close the file, to restore a semblance of order to a city unsettled by the brutality. But as the line went dead, the desert air outside your sanctuary seemed to thicken with a familiar unease. You moved with a renewed, almost desperate focus. The desktop glowed, reflecting the grim lines etched around your eyes. Files, digital and physical, spread across the table, mingling with the scattered bills from the counter. You scoured the initial reports, the grainy crime scene photos you'd managed to procure through a carefully placed call to a sympathetic contact, bypassing official channels. The official suspect, the associate, was a man of brute force, known for direct confrontation. You zoomed in on a detail in one of the photographs, a faint, almost imperceptible scratch on the wooden floorboard near the body. It was shallow, angular, a mark easily dismissed as accidental damage. But your mind, a vast archive of forgotten details, pulled up a memory. A similar mark, almost identical in its specific angle and depth, had been found at the scene of the first victim decades ago. It wasn't a tool mark, not exactly. It was too slight, too inconsistent. It was something else. You pulled up the old forensic reports, the ones that had been filed away, deemed insignificant. Inconsistent scoring. One line read, possible incidental contact with non-specific object. You remembered the detective from that era, dismissive, focused on the obvious. But you had lingered, had felt the faint tremor of something intentional in its placement. Now you saw it again, and this time you had a new piece of the puzzle. The new victim, like the old, had a specific, almost ritualistic arrangement of personal items around their body. A small, polished river stone, a single perfectly folded handkerchief, a tarnished silver locket. These items, seemingly innocuous, had been described in both cases. The associate had no known predilection for such macabre artistry. His history was one of explosive, messy altercations, not carefully curated displays. Your fingers danced across the keyboard, cross-referencing the river stone. It was a common type, easily found. But the locket. The first victim's locket had been a family heirloom, a unique piece. This was not a random item. The meticulousness, the specific, almost signature scratch, the curated objects. These were not the hallmarks of a man driven by sudden rage. They had been watching, waiting, perfecting their craft. And now, they were mocking the very system that had once dismissed you. The desert wind, a phantom sculptor, etched the night outside the safehouse, but within, a different kind of pressure mounted. It sat on a crate in the corner, a testament to choices made and paths diverged, its steady thrum a counterpoint to the chaotic symphony in your mind. The detective's words from earlier still echoed, a dull thud against the walls of your awareness. The associate, a man known for volatile outbursts, seen near the victim's property hours before the discovery. It was too neat, a convenient knot tied with sloppy string. Your fingers traced the grainy photographs spread across the makeshift table. New victims. New crime, but an old, familiar chill settled in your bones. The faces blurred, became ghosts in the low lamplight, each one a silent accusation. You pushed away the recent reports, the easy answers, and reached for the worn file, its edges soft with years of obsessive handling. Your cold case, the one that had splintered your world into jagged fragments. You knew its every crease, every coffee stain, every damning blank space. The official conclusion had been a dead end, a phantom killer. But you had never believed it. Not truly. The associate. Yes, a temper. Yes, motive. But the other details, the ones brushed aside as incidental, they clawed at you. You remembered the detective's dismissive tone about the disarray. Just a struggle, Seth. Nothing more. But you had seen beyond the obvious. Your gaze fell upon an old photograph from your case taken years ago. A wide shot of the victim's living room after the initial chaos had been documented. The furniture was overturned, cushions askew, a mirror shattered. Standard. But something in the corner, almost out of frame, caught your eye again, as it always did. A small wooden birdcage, empty, leaning against a broken lamp. And beside it, meticulously arranged on the dusty floor, 3 small polished river stones. A forgotten trinket? A child's plaything? It had been noted, then dismissed. Inconsequential. You leaned back, the rough wood of the chair digging into your shoulders. Inconsequential. How many crucial threads had been severed by that word? Now you pulled up the digital images from the new crime scene on your tablet, zooming in, panning across the digital canvas. The official reports mentioned a struggle, objects thrown, the typical violence. But you weren't looking for typical. You were looking for the untypical within the typical. Your eyes scanned the periphery, the edges of the chaos, and there it was. Not a birdcage, not stones, but another set of objects, similarly small, similarly out of place. On a windowsill, amidst shards of glass and splintered wood, sat 3 polished pieces of sea glass, arranged in a precise triangular formation. Their colors, muted by the flash, still held a faint, deliberate glow. A tremor ran through you. Not a coincidence. Not random debris. The detective had likely seen it, noted it as odd, then filed it under quirk of the scene. But you saw the echo. You flipped back to your old case files, the river stones. Smooth, worn by current, 3 of them. You returned to the tablet, the sea glass, smooth, worn by tide. The hum of the money counter seemed to grow louder, a high-pitched whine that threatened to shatter the quiet. It wasn't about the objects themselves, but their nature. Natural smoothed elements and their arrangement. 3. A deliberate, almost ceremonial placement amidst destruction. It wasn't about the specific item, but the gesture. A signature. A macabre artist leaving their mark, not with blood or a weapon, but with the quiet statement of 3 natural elements carefully arranged, a silent witness to the violence. The associate? A pawn. A convenient distraction. Or, more terrifyingly, had never left. This wasn't a resurgence. It was a continuation. A pattern. A ritual. You thought of the victims. Disparate lives, varying circumstances, but now linked by this quiet, defiant symbol. What did 3 river stones mean? What did 3 pieces of sea glass signify? It wasn't a random act of violence. It was a message, carefully crafted and whispered into the chaos. The killer wasn't just taking lives. They were composing a grim narrative. Your breath hitched. The motive wasn't about revenge or passion or money. It was about this ritual. The tension in the small desert safehouse thickened, becoming a palpable weight on your chest. You were no longer just a disgraced former detective chasing ghosts. You were standing on the precipice of understanding a monster. You had found the pattern. Now you had to break its code. You leaned back, the rough wood of the chair digging into your shoulders, the digital images from the new crime scene still burning behind your eyelids. Inconsequential. The word had been a ghost, a whisper from a past failure. Not a common knot, not standard cordage, but a specific, almost artisanal weave, a pattern so intricate it spoke of custom fabrication. That pattern, a unique signature, had been dismissed then, a mere footnote. Now it was a blazing beacon. Your fingers traced the cool glass of the tablet, the determination a cold, hard knot in your gut. The desert wind outside sang its ancient lament, but inside, a new kind of hunt began. The sun was a molten coin sinking beneath the horizon when you left the safe house. The counter's drone fading behind you, leaving only the engine's growl and the accelerating pulse in your temples. The drive was a blur of highway lights and the skeletal silhouettes of scrub brush. Hours dissolved into the rearview mirror until the city's sprawl began to claw at the edges of the night. Your destination, a custom fabrication shop listed in an obscure industrial directory, was tucked away in a district of crumbling warehouses and forgotten factories. The address led you down a narrow, unlit lane, where rust-eaten gates guarded derelict buildings. The air grew heavy with the smell of metal, oil, and something else. A faint, acrid tang of chemicals. The shop itself was a low, squat structure, its windows grimy and opaque. A single weak bulb casting a pallid glow over a padlocked side door. You moved with the practiced stealth of a predator, each footfall measured, each breath controlled. The main entrance was a fortified steel behemoth, but you knew better than to try the obvious. Around the back, a chain-link fence, rusted through in places, offered a precarious entry. A precise cut with your compact wire snips, a careful bend of the wire, and you were through. The metal groaning a protest that felt deafening in the stillness. Inside the yard, discarded machinery lay like forgotten beasts, their forms distorted by the moonlight. You moved towards a smaller secondary entrance, a fire escape leading to what looked like an office on the second floor. The metal grated under your weight, each step a gamble, but the door at the top, surprisingly, was merely latched, not locked. A small victory or a trap. The air inside was thick with the scent of machining oil and stale cigarettes. Dust motes danced in the sparse beams of moonlight filtering through the high windows. You descended a creaking staircase, each step a potential betrayal, into the main fabrication floor. Shapes loomed out of the gloom, lathes, presses, welding stations, all silent, dormant. Your eyes, accustomed to the low light, scanned for anything out of place, anything that screamed killer. Then, a flicker. A faint amber glow from a far corner. A workbench, illuminated by a low-wattage lamp, revealed a man hunched over a complex apparatus. The proprietor, perhaps. His back was to you, his movements precise, focused. He was working on something small, intricate, a delicate piece of machinery. You needed a closer look, a confirmation of the pattern, the weave. You ghosted closer, using the hulking forms of the machines as cover. The air grew warmer here, smelling faintly of heated metal. The man stiffened, his head snapping up. He spun around, his eyes wide, feral, reflecting the amber glow of his lamp. He wasn't old, perhaps mid-40s, gaunt, with an intensity that bordered on madness. "Who's there?" he rasped, his voice a dry rustle. His hand shot out, grabbing a heavy wrench from the workbench. I asked, "Who are you?" His voice gained an edge of desperation, fear morphing into aggression. This wasn't the calm, calculated killer you imagined, but a cornered animal. You knew you had been seen, your cover blown. Retreat was the logical choice, but something held you. The light on his workbench, the glint of metal. You needed to see what he was working on. He lunged, a frantic, clumsy swing of the wrench. He stumbled, regaining his footing, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Get out now." You used his momentum against him, shoving him hard against a stack of metal sheets. The clang was deafening, echoing through the cavernous space. He cried out, more surprised than hurt, momentarily stunned. That was your chance. You lunged towards the workbench, your eyes fixing on the object under the lamp. There it was. Not the finished ligature, but the tooling, the specialized jig used to create that precise, unique weave. A small, custom-built machine, its gears and levers intricately designed. And next to it, a blueprint, faded with age, yet unmistakably detailing the same custom cordage, dated decades ago. This place, this proprietor, had been creating the killer's custom tools for years, perhaps unknowingly, perhaps not. As your mind reeled, a sharp pain blossomed at the back of your head. The proprietor, recovering faster than you anticipated, had grabbed a smaller but equally heavy piece of metal tubing. You staggered, a wave of nausea washing over you, but your grip on the blueprint remained firm. You had what you came for. The proprietor was coming at you again, his face contorted with a frantic rage. You knew you couldn't stay. The adrenaline surged, overriding the throbbing pain. You moved, a desperate, stumbling dash towards the fire escape, the proprietor's shouts fading into a dull roar behind you. You were out, into the cool night air, the clang of the door locking behind you, the faint, metallic taste of blood in your mouth. You had the proof, the thread that connected the past to the present, the killer to this obscure shop. But you were also exposed, a raw nerve, now a known quantity to a man who, willingly or unwillingly, was entangled with a phantom. The hunt had just become infinitely more dangerous. The clang of metal sheets still vibrated in the air as your hand closed around the object on the workbench. Not a weapon, not immediately. It was a heavy, industrial-grade metal file, its ridged surface rough against your palm. The assailant, still reeling from the unexpected shove, was struggling to regain his balance, his grunts echoing. This was your chance. You brought the file down, not on him, but scraping it hard, deliberately, against the nearest stack of corrugated steel. The shriek that erupted was visceral, a raw, grating sound that clawed at the eardrums, far louder and more disorienting than the initial clang. The assailant cried out again, clutching his head, his momentary advantage shattered by the sonic assault. In that brief, precious window, you moved. Through the maze of machinery and shadowed corners, you ran, the metallic screech fading behind you. The cavernous space gave way to a service tunnel, then a dilapidated back exit. You burst into the cool night air, gasping, the taste of dust and adrenaline sharp on your tongue. The factory was a hulking silhouette against the faint glow of distant city lights. You didn't look back. Your escape was fueled by instinct, a desperate scramble for distance. As you put miles between yourself and the factory, a detail from the confrontation flickered in your mind. On the assailant's jacket, just before you pushed him, a small, intricate pin. A stylized scorpion. You'd seen that before. Not on a person, but in the periphery of your old case files. A footnote about a small local motorcycle club, long disbanded, that one of the original victims had a tangential connection to. A forgotten thread. The desert wind was a dry whisper against your face as your battered vehicle ate up the miles. The scorpion pin, a phantom weight in your memory, had led you here, to the edge of nowhere. The GPS coordinates, hastily extracted from a discarded burner phone found near the factory's back exit, pointed to this isolated stretch of scrubland. The sun, a brutal orange disk, was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues. A low, unassuming structure, blending almost seamlessly with the parched earth and sparse mesquite. A single, dusty pickup truck was parked askew beside it. The desert safehouse. It vibrated through the ground, a restless pulse in the stillness. You approached with caution, every sense heightened, the air thick with tension. The front door was ajar, a sliver of yellow light escaping into the gathering dusk. The hum grew louder, originating from a back room. The main living space was sparse but meticulously clean. A single, scarred wooden table dominated the center, covered in a topographical map of the region, marked with red circles and cryptic notes. You moved towards the table, your eyes scanning the map. The red circles weren't random. They corresponded to the locations of the new victims. But one circle, larger and more intensely marked, stood out. You flipped open the journal. The handwriting was precise, almost clinical, yet laced with an undercurrent of simmering rage. It detailed observations, calculations, a painstaking reconstruction of the original murders. But then, a new set of entries began, charting your own movements, your inquiries, your disgraced past. Pages were filled with newspaper clippings about your downfall, underlined and annotated with furious, slanted script. Failed. Blind. Justice denied. A sharp metallic click from behind you. Your body tensed, every muscle coiling. You didn't need to turn to know you were no longer alone. It was familiar, yet utterly alien in this context. You slowly turned, your weapon held steady. Standing in the doorway of the room where the money counter hummed was the victim's sibling. Not the assailant from the factory, but the one you had spoken to, the one who had seemed so broken, so consumed by grief all those years ago. Their face, once etched with sorrow, was now a mask of calculated fury. My sister. Gone, because you couldn't connect the dots. They gestured around the room, a sweep of their hand encompassing the maps, the journal, the entire meticulous setup. I connected them, every single one. I learned his patterns, his tells, the things you overlooked. Your eyes darted to the locket in their hand. It was the same locket you'd seen in a faded photograph from the original crime scene, a gift from the victim to her sibling, presumed lost. But more than that, you noticed the faint, distinct scar above their right eyebrow. A thin, jagged line. A detail mentioned in the original victim's autopsy report, a minor injury sustained during a childhood accident that the victim's sibling had always attributed to a childhood mishap. But the report noted it was from a distinct, sharp-edged piece of debris found at the first crime scene, after the initial struggle. He'd just changed faces. And when you failed to see it, I decided I would finish what you started. The new murders, the meticulously recreated patterns. They weren't just about the original killer. They were about you. A twisted, decades-long vendetta, finally brought to light in the desolate heart of the desert. The final piece of evidence wasn't just the locket or the scar. It was the knowledge of that scar, linking the sibling not just to the victim, but to the secret details of the crime itself. They hadn't just investigated. They had been there, or had access to information only the perpetrator or an unseen witness would possess. The air crackled, thick with the weight of years of unanswered questions, now laid bare. The killer wasn't just a vengeful relative. They were an avenging angel, warped by grief into something monstrous, meticulously framing you as part of their ultimate devastating closure. Grit crunches under your boots as you step through the gaping doorway, the air thick with the scent of aged dust and the faint metallic tang of ozone from the machine. The sunlight, a brutal, unforgiving blade, slices through grimy windows, illuminating motes dancing in the stagnant air. The safehouse is stark, utilitarian, a scarred wooden table, overturned chairs, and in the center, a steel folding table burdened by stacks of crisp bills. The counter hums beside them, its digital display a silent, relentless tally. This is it. The culmination of phantom trails and echoing screams. The end of the hunt. And then you see him. Not hidden, not lurking, but simply present. He stands by the table, a figure etched against the blinding light, his posture unnervingly calm. He is no stranger, not truly. The operative. A quiet, unassuming presence from your past, a cog in the vast machinery of the force you once served. He was always there, a flicker at the edge of your vision, a name on a memo, a face in a crowded briefing room forgotten until this moment. Seth Corbin. His voice is a low, even murmur, cutting through the money counter's thrum. It holds no inflection of surprise, only a weary confirmation. You always were persistent. Or perhaps just foolish. Your hand instinctively brushes the worn leather of your concealed sidearm, a familiar weight. Your breath hitches, not from fear, but from the sudden, visceral jolt of understanding. His personal crucible. The operative, you state, your voice rough, the name feeling like a betrayal on your tongue. All this time. Why? He offers a slight, almost imperceptible tilt of his head towards the stacks of cash. Justice, Seth. The funds that vanished from the warehouse, the very case that unraveled your career? You do. The missing millions, the cornerstone of the case that broke you. You remember the official story, the theories, the dead ends. You were there, you realize, the pieces clicking into place with a sickening finality. You saw it all. The corruption, the greed, the real criminals who walked free. The funds were a means to an end, a redistribution. His gaze hardens, fixing on you. And your failure, Seth, allowed them to escape. You were so focused on the obvious, the loud criminals, you missed the quiet rot beneath the floorboards. The money counter continues its relentless count, a mocking counterpoint to his words. You glance at the stacks. They are far more than the original missing funds. This isn't about justice, you counter, stepping further into the room, your stance wide, ready. This is a vendetta, these new murders. They mimic the old ones, but they're different. They're designed to draw me out, to punish me. To make you see, he corrects, his voice rising slightly, a fragile thread of emotion finally surfacing. To make you understand the suffering your blindness caused. The families who received no closure. The lives destroyed by the true architects of that original crime, whom you, in your professional arrogance, let slip away. I had to ensure their story wasn't forgotten, not just of the original funds, but of every life touched, every truth buried. And it ends with you, Seth. Your eyes narrow, scanning his hands, his posture. He holds no obvious weapon, but the calm intensity in his gaze is a weapon in itself. This isn't a simple robbery. It's a meticulously planned execution of a years-long design. He wanted you here, in this desolate place, surrounded by the spoils of his twisted crusade, to witness his final act. What's your final act, operative? You ask, your voice steady, though your heart hammers against your ribs. To kill me? To frame me? He takes a slow, deliberate step towards the table, his hand reaching for something just out of your direct line of sight. To complete the circuit, Seth. To tie up all the loose ends. Your career ended because of what happened that night. Now your life will end because of what I made happen. And the world will finally see the real villain. A glint of steel flashes in his hand as he lifts it. Not a gun, but a heavy, ornate letter opener, its blade catching the harsh desert light. It's a relic, perhaps from an old desk, a symbolic tool. He intends to make this personal, intimate, a grim reflection of the quiet, insidious nature of his decades-long revenge. Resolution Aftermath. The letter opener, heavy and cold, arcs through the air, a silver serpent striking for your throat. Time distends, each microsecond a stretched canvas. You see the glint, the determined set of his jaw. The mastermind, the phantom who has haunted your waking hours and poisoned your sleep for decades. There is no surprise, only a grim recognition of the end game. Your body, weary and bruised, responds with an instinct honed in forgotten alleys and dust-choked skirmishes. You twist, a desperate contortion, the blade scraping against your shoulder, a searing line of fire across your skin, rather than the fatal plunge he intended. A grunt escapes your lips, less from pain and more from the sheer burning exhaustion of this long chase. Your hand, quicker than thought, finds purchase on his wrist, a vice grip forged from years of apprehending the desperate and the dangerous. You yank, throwing your weight into the move, using his own momentum against him. He stumbles forward, off balance, the letter opener clattering to the concrete floor, a dull echo in the vast, empty space. Dust, disturbed by the sudden struggle, dances in the shafts of light piercing the grimy windows. He recovers, surprisingly agile for his age, a feral glint in his eyes. He lunges, a blur of motion aiming a fist at your temple. You duck, the wind of his blow rustling your hair, and counter with a short, sharp jab to his gut. A choked gasp escapes him, and he doubles over, momentarily winded. This is it. This is the moment you've been chasing, the culmination of broken promises and shattered lives. The air in the safe house crackles with raw, unadulterated tension. You don't hesitate. Years of pent-up frustration, of gnawing guilt, fuel your next move. You seize him by the collar, slamming him against the rough concrete wall. The impact rattles the sparse furnishings, and a fine shower of dust descends from the ceiling. His breath comes in ragged gasps, his eyes, once so calculating, now wide with a flicker of panic. "Why?" you demand, your voice raw, barely a whisper above the money counter's drone. All of it. Why? A cruel smile plays on his lips, blood trickling from a cut above his brow. "Because," he rasps, his voice surprisingly strong despite the impact. "Some truths are too inconvenient, Seth. This wasn't just about money, not truly. It was about control, about erasing inconvenient histories, about a twisted sense of justice he had meticulously carved for himself. The decades-spanning murders, the carefully planted misdirections, the way he had always been one step ahead. It all clicked into a horrifying, seamless whole. He wasn't just a killer. He was a meticulous architect of oblivion. It's over. The approaching sound is a promise of order, of the law finally catching up to the ghost you've pursued for so long. He hears them too, and the flicker of panic in his eyes intensifies, replaced by a desperate, fleeting resignation. He slumps against your grip, his fight draining away like sand through a sieve. Moments later, the door to the safehouse bursts open, letting in a blinding flood of desert light and a swirl of dust. The arriving detective, followed by several officers, stands framed in the doorway, weapon drawn, eyes sweeping the scene. Their faces, etched with concern and relief, tell their own story. "Seth!" the arriving detective shouts, lowering his weapon slightly, seeing the situation contained. You release your grip on the mastermind, who slides down the wall to a sitting position, his gaze fixed on nothing, the fight entirely gone. You step back, your muscles screaming in protest, your shoulder throbbing with a dull ache. The air, thick with the smell of dust and old concrete, suddenly feels lighter. The officers move in swiftly, securing the mastermind, cuffing him with professional efficiency. You watch, numb, as the officers lead him away, his head bowed, his defiant gaze finally broken. The arriving detective approaches you, his face a mixture of admiration and concern. "You did it, Seth. You actually did it." He gestures to your bleeding shoulder. "Let's get you looked at." You nod, a slow, weary motion. The adrenaline begins its slow retreat, leaving behind a vast, aching emptiness. The physical toll is immediate. Every muscle aches, your head pounds, and the scrape on your shoulder burns. But the emotional weight, the decades of carrying this burden, is only just beginning to settle. The phantom is caught, but the scars remain. You walk towards the open door, stepping out into the harsh, unforgiving desert light. The sirens fade into the distance, carrying the mastermind away. Justice, in its own slow, grinding way, has been served. But the resolution feels less like triumph and more like the quiet, profound end of a very long, very lonely journey. You trace the rough grain of the wooden table, the splintered edge a small, familiar pain under your thumb. The portable money counter, a sleek, gray box on a nearby crate, whirs with a mechanical drone, counting a stack of crisp, unmarked bills. Its rhythm is relentless, an indifferent pulse in the quiet aftermath. The emptiness you felt earlier still resides within you, a hollow echo, but it is no longer vast and aching. It has begun to solidify, to take shape, like sand settling after a gale. The scrape on your shoulder still burns, a dull throb beneath the makeshift bandage, a physical reminder of the razor's edge you walked. Your head, once a drum, now merely hums with a low, persistent thrum. You watch the counter for a moment, its digital display ticking upwards with unnerving speed. This money, a portion of what was recovered, is a testament, a cold, hard fact in a world that often felt utterly devoid of them. It represents a different kind of justice, one measured in restitution, not just retribution. A figure steps into your periphery, the chief of the precinct, his face etched with a weariness that mirrors your own, yet softened by a nascent relief. He doesn't speak immediately, merely settles onto a folding chair opposite you, his gaze steady, assessing. You meet his eyes, no longer flinching from the judgment that once resided there. They're calling it an open and shut, the chief finally says, his voice a low gravel. All of it. The connections, the motives, the decades of planning. The evidence is overwhelming. You nod slowly. It always was, just hidden in plain sight. He offers a slight, almost imperceptible shake of his head. No, you saw it. You just couldn't make them see it. There's no accusation in his tone, only an acknowledgement of a shared, bitter history. The details are still emerging, but the narrative is clear. He never left. Just changed his method, his targets, his hiding places. A ghost in the machine. The Phantom Killer, a name that once haunted your waking hours and plagued your dreams, is now just a man. A man with a name, a history, and a meticulously crafted network of deceit that finally unraveled under the relentless pressure you applied. The truth, when it came, was not a sudden explosion of insight, but a slow, agonizing dawn, each piece of the puzzle slotting into place with the precision of a master clockmaker. The satisfaction you expected to feel, a triumphant roar against years of injustice, never materialized. Instead, there was only a profound weariness, the exhaustion of a marathon runner crossing the finish line, utterly spent. The commission has reviewed everything. The chief continues, leaning forward slightly, his voice dropping. Your name. It's being cleared. Quietly, but thoroughly. The official report will reflect your original findings, the ones they buried. It won't bring back what you lost, Seth. But it's a start. A strange sensation blossoms in your chest. Not joy, not vindication, but a quiet loosening of a knot you hadn't realized was still so tight. Your reputation, once a shattered mirror, is beginning to mend. The fragments are still visible, the cracks still there, but the reflection is no longer distorted beyond recognition. You look out the reinforced window of the safehouse. Beyond the sandbags and the barbed wire, the desert stretches, vast and indifferent under the midday sun. It is a landscape of stark contrasts, brutal beauty, and endless horizons. It reminds you of yourself, perhaps. What now, you ask, the words tasting foreign on your tongue. The question isn't directed at the chief, but at the expanse beyond, at the future that now lies before you, unwritten. He shrugs, a gesture of profound understanding. That's up to you. There's a spot if you want it. Consulting. Or you could walk away entirely. Disappear into this desert and never look back. The idea of walking away is tempting, a siren song of absolute peace. You touch the small, faded photograph tucked into your wallet, the image of a younger you, smiling, before the world fractured. The person in that picture feels like a stranger, a ghost from a different lifetime. You are no longer that man. The crucible of this hunt, the weight of the decades-long burden, has forged something new within you. You are sharper, harder perhaps, but also clearer. The dust has settled, and you can finally see. The portable money counter finishes its cycle with a soft click, its display showing a final significant number. The quiet hum continues, a background symphony to your thoughts. You lift your gaze from the photograph, from the past, and meet the chief's expectant eyes. A flicker of something determined, something resolute, ignites within you. The peace you sought is not an absence of conflict, but a clarity of purpose. The ghost is gone, but the detective remains. And the world, you realize, still has secrets waiting to be unearthed. The desert, you say, a faint smile touching your lips, is a lonely place, but some secrets bury themselves deeper than sand. The chief nods, a knowing glint in his eyes. The offer isn't just a job, it's a recognition. A new beginning, scarred but stronger. The indelible mark of your ordeal will always be a part of you. A compass pointing towards the hidden truths that others overlook. You are Seth Corbin, and the hunt, in its truest form, has only just begun. The desert safehouse, with its humming counter, holds the quiet promise of an uncertain yet purposeful future.